Welcome to Mikab Model College online tutorial. We hope at the end of this lesson, you will have acquired the expected learning outcome. Sit down and listen attentively as we introduce your subject teacher.
Hello students, you are welcome to another class on English language. I am Sani Onimisi Victor. If you recall, last time we stopped at phrases. I told you that a phrase is a group of words without a finite verb that will only form part of a sentence. Then I told you that three things are vital if an expression must qualify as a phrase. That is, when the verb in such an expression is not a finite verb. You can only know through three areas. And I told you that if there is to before that verb, such expression is a phrase. And I also told you that if it is a gerund, that is, ing form of a verb is added in the verb, it is a phrase. And finally, I told you that if the verb in question is used as an adjective, like broken bottle, it is also a phrase. Now, we'll try to look at what happens in a situation whereby the verb in an expression is a finite verb. What is that called? That will lead us to another topic. Now, and the topic is clauses. The topic is clauses. What is a clause? A clause is a group of words with a finite verb forming part of the sentence. That is, a clause is a group of words with a finite verb and it will form part of the sentence. A finite verb is the type of verb that indicates or shows a particular tense. Examples of finite verbs. Let's look at these. They arrived yesterday. If you look at this expression, this statement, they arrived yesterday. Arrived is underlined. Now, this verb is showing a tense, and the type of tense is past tense. Therefore, the expression is not a phrase because the verb there is a finite verb. We can refer to it as a clause. Look at the second one. Musa is walking home. Musa is walking home. Look at the underlying aspect of it. Is walking home. Is walking home belongs to a particular tense, and that type of tense is present continuous tense. Therefore, it's a clause. Look at this one. Reading in the night is bad. The reading there is a gerund, ing form of the verb. It is not a finite verb, and therefore it cannot be referred to as a clause. That is a phrase. Now, let's look at the next one, the fourth one. To pass examination is difficult. As I told you, to has come before pass. Therefore, it's a phrase. Now, it is a non-finite verb. And the major difference between the phrase and the clause is the finite and non-finite forms of the verb that we are talking about. Now, while a clause contains finite verb, a phrase does not contain a finite verb, but may contain a non-finite verb. That is just the major difference between a phrase and a clause. Therefore, if the verb in expression given does not have any of the characteristics of a non-finite verb that we earlier discussed under phrase, the expression should be considered a clause. Let's look at these examples. 1. The book which my father gave me has been stolen. Now, the underlying aspect of this statement, which my father gave me, when you look at this expression now, gave is a verb here, and it's a finite verb. Therefore, the expression is a clause. Now, look at a clause with a finite verb. The verb is gave. Now, look at the second example. She saw the pictures while she was waiting for you. She saw the pictures while she was waiting for you. When you look at this expression, while she was waiting for you, was waiting is a finite verb. That it is containing a finite verb, it is a clause. Now, let's look at the next one. At the moment of impact, the eyes is left exposed. Now, when you look at this underlying aspect, there is no finite verb here. There is no finite verb. Therefore, it is not a clause. It is a phrase. Now, types of clauses. There are two basic types of clauses. These are independent clause and subordinate or dependent clause. That is, the first one is main clause. The main clause is also known as independent clause. This is the type of clause that can stand on its own to make a complete sense or sentence. This means that all independent clauses are sentences. For example, example 1, I am going home now. I am going home now. Now, when you look at this expression, I'm going home now is a clause because it contains a finite verb, and that is a main clause. Main clause. Main clause. It can stand on its own to make meaningful sense or meaning. Look at the second one, the second example. The choir came and ministered. Came and ministered. Past tense is a finite verb. Therefore, it is a clause. It's a main clause because it can stand on its own. Look at the third one. He has reported to the police. He has reported to the police. That verb here, the verb here, has reported, is present perfect tense. Present perfect tense. And is a finite verb because it belongs to a particular tense. Therefore, it is a clause and it is an independent clause. Now, the second one is subordinate clause. The second one is subordinate clause. I've told you that another name for this subordinate clause is dependent clause. This is a group of words that always contains a finite verb but does not express a complete thought. That is, it expresses, that subordinate clause has a finite verb. It contains a finite verb, but it does not make a complete sense, that is, complete thought, which means that it is called subordinate clause because on its own, it cannot stand. It must depend. It must depend on the main clause before it can make meaningful meaning. This cannot stand on its own to make a complete sense or a sentence. Now, features of subordinate stroke dependent clause. That is, what are the features of this clause? 1, it is a group of words, as we have said. 2, it always has a finite verb. It always has a finite verb. The third one is that it does not express a complete thought. That is, it needs the main clause to make a complete sense or sentence. 4, it only forms part of the sentence, which means that an expression that is classified as a subordinate clause must have 4 features. 1, it is a group of words, as we have said. It does not make a complete thought. It must depend on main clause before it can make a meaningful, before it can have a meaningful meaning. And the last one is that it only forms part of the sentence. Now, examples. 1, as soon as the boy saw the teacher, he took to his heels. Now, let's look at the underlined aspect. Now, as soon as the boy saw the teacher, now this one, if you remove it now, it cannot stand on its own, though it is a clause. That is why it is called subordinate clause. It is called subordinate clause. When you look at the second part, he took to his heel. This one can stand on its own. That is why it is called main clause, which means the underlying aspect, that is the underlying part of this sentence, is a subordinate clause or dependent clause. Why this one that is not underlined is the main clause. Now let's look at the second example. Unless he passes the examination, he will not travel abroad. When you look at this, the underlying part is subordinate because on its own it cannot stand. But he will not travel abroad on its own can stand. That is why it is called main clause. Now, the landlord whose house was burgled has reported to the police. Look at the division, main clause. The landlord has reported to the police. Look at the second one, the subordinate clause, whose house was burgled. Now, when you join these two elements together, you now have the landlord whose house was burgled has reported to the police. Now, when you look at the two, the landlord has reported to the police can stand. The second one, whose house was burgled, cannot stand on its own. It has to depend on the main clause. Thank you, students. We have come to the end of this lesson. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you can get more information about this lesson. Thank you and God bless you.